Okay, for our program to work more effectively, we need it to be able to run continuously until the user decides they don't want to use it anymore. So let's come up here to the top and we want to set up a while loop. So remember, a while loop is used when we don't know the number of loops. Okay, so a for loop, we know what number, the number of times. In a while loop, we don't understand that. All right, let's set our user number as let's give it a default value right here of a 0, and that'll just help us here in our loop. So we'll just set user number equal to 0. Remember, the user is going to pick that, but just for the very first time that it runs, we'll have that number be 0. All right, so now we're going to create a while loop. So we're going to say while, and then the condition that we want to put in here is a condition that we want to continue until some event happens. And so that event could be many different things. One way we could do it is we want when the user quits. So we could say, let's just do a comment up here. User quits the program if they enter -1. Okay, so if they give us a -1, that means they want to exit the program. If we made this into like a queue to exit the program, we would run into an issue here where we're casting it into an integer. So keeping it at a -1 will be just a quick way for us to be able to figure that out. There's better ways or more elegant ways to do it if this was a more sophisticated program, but we're just going to keep it this way. Okay, so we want to check now if the user number, if we want to run under all conditions except when the user number equals -1. So we want to say while user number is not equal to -1, then we want to do the loop. Okay, so the loop is executed as long as the user does not enter in a -1. Okay, so what we need to do now is we need to get all of these inside of the while loop. So if I scroll down, we're going to get kind of copy all this and go all the way down to the bottom. Right here is where we want to loop that. So then I've highlighted it all and I'm going to hit the tab button and that's going to put it inside the loop. Your program might not be showing these little dots right here. This is the white spaces. This is really helpful in Python to make sure that you actually have the correct spacing in here. If you want to change that, you can do Control-Shift-P or Command-Shift-P in here. And we can say white space, and right there it says view toggle render white space. If I click on that, see that went away. So Control-Shift-P, type in white space, and now I can have that kind of show up. I like it because it makes sure that we have the right spaces, but maybe that's distracting to some people. Okay, so now we're going to answer, we're going to run this code right here. Let me actually leave that space in there. I'm going to get rid of this because we've already determined we know what a prime number is. Okay, and then I'm going to take this for loop right here, just this comment, and I'm going to move it outside. This is just kind of notes to ourselves, but this is just, I just want this as clean as possible so we know exactly what we're looping. Okay, so everything that's tabbed over here is going to be inside the loop, and we'll just continuously run this loop every time to determine whether or not the number, they enter in a -1. Okay, so let's see if that works. So I'm going to run the program over here. Let's make that a little bit bigger. All right, so enter in a positive number. So let's try 5. And nothing happens. Okay, so that's not good. Let's try 2. We stay inside the loop. So let's see if we can figure out what we did wrong so that we're not actually saying whether or not the prime number is there. We could run a debugger right now, but hopefully this is a pretty easy one to see. So if we check out our loop right here, right now, the if statement right here, these numbers are outside the loop. So we actually want to move this inside the loop. So all we're going to do is highlight them and press tab. And now these are inside of our while loop. You can actually click on this and we can see all that stuff's inside the while loop. Okay, so let's save that. We're going to run it. And we get an error. So let's kill that and kill that. Let's run it. All right, so that trash can sometimes be helpful. Sometimes in VS Code, it's still running kind of older stuff, and so killing the terminal can help. All right, so here we have, let's enter in a prime number. Let's try a 5. So 5 is prime. Okay, let's try 3. 3 is prime. 2 is prime. We don't actually tell the user, hey, do a -1 to quit. So that's one thing we need to fix, but let's just see if it actually works. So I enter in a -1, and it is still evaluating that -1 is a prime, but we only want positive numbers. We just want to quit the program when it gets to this point right here. Okay, so let's trash can this one. And so up here, we need to prompt the user. So let's just say -1 to quit. Okay, and now before we do this evaluation right here, we want to see, did the user put -1? If they put -1, maybe we want to do something. Okay, so let's try right here. Let's say if user number equals. This is probably one of the most common mistakes new people, and I make it too sometimes. You don't want to do a single equal. If it's an if statement, we want to do those double equals right there, right? So if user number equals -1, okay, then what do we want to do? We actually want to leave the while loop, okay? So there's a special keyword that we can use. Let's put it up here. We can do something called a break. And what a break does is a break exits the loop. Okay, so it's just going to exit out of the loop and we'll end down here and then the program will end. Okay, so we can just stick right here and we can say break. Make sure this is tabbed over. Notice that we're inside the while loop with this tab and we're inside the if statement with that tab. Okay, so we break out of the loop. Let's see if that works. So I'm going to save it and I'll run it. And if I put in let's try, make sure we didn't break anything. So we got to fix maybe this spacing, maybe move our colon over. Let's try. So 3, it works. If I put in a -1, okay, it just exits the program. We break out of the program. All right, let's do one more thing that will be important thing to be able to learn about is, let's say, what if the user actually puts a negative number in, okay? We don't want to use the user to do that. So if the user number is less than -1, so it's a negative number, what we want to do is something called a continue. So let's tell the user, hey, that you must be a positive number. So let's print out number must be positive. Okay, and then let's talk about what a continue does. So what a continue does is a continue will go to the end of the loop and start over. Okay, so the benefit of doing a continue is it's not going to run any of this code. So it's kind of like a break, right? It says, hey, I'm not going to execute any of this code, but I want to stay inside the loop. So go to the end of the loop without executing any code and then start over here at the top. Okay, so let's see if that works. So we're going to enter in a 3. Okay, let's enter in a negative number, so a -4. And it tells us the number must be positive, and then we're back at the top of the loop, right? It doesn't say anything about -4 being a prime. It didn't evaluate any of that. It just skipped to the end, okay? Let's fix our problem here. So I'm going to delete that, and I'm going to put this and a space. Okay. The other thing that we might want to do is, now that we know about this keyword for break, when we get down here and we determine that, hey, that is a prime number, we don't want to keep running the code. So let's do the number is false, right? Right there. So it is prime false. And then let's do a break. Okay, the code is done. We want to be able to exit out of there. Okay, so this is just breaking out of this if statement, not out of the while loop. Let's make sure that works, because we want it to come here and still say whether or not it's a prime or not. So I'm going to run that, and let's see, let's give it a pretty big number, like 35. And so 35 is not a prime. And if you want, you could run the debugger and see that we're exiting out of the loop and we're checking whether or not that is a prime. Okay, so our code's working great. There's some ways we could refactor, so we could make some changes to this code to make it a little better. Maybe we have a better menu system that can use -1 instead of not. But that's the code for this week. Go ahead and submit your code, and then I need a picture also of the output. It's best if you make the output look like the assignment. So I would come here and I would just make it exactly like this, right? So enter a 5, enter a 6, enter a 17, and you should get these same numbers, and that'll just ensure. So you're going to do a screenshot of your program running like this. All right, good luck.